So it's just all an illusion, but we need to live by it.
Yeah, it's lucid dreaming. You're aware that you're dreaming, and yet you must consist with the dream.
I think Nietzsche is a little more consistent than you are.
How do you get love and justice and free will out of inanimate matter?
Well, it's all in the programming.
You would agree, we can't point to that thing, and we can't.
That's right, it's not material.
But it's not. There is
No, it is very real.
Not material. There's no evidence.
Oh, yes, there is.
No, there is.
Yes, there is.
These are some of the best questions and arguments brought by college students. Can Cliffe keep up? Stick around until the end to see two students take on Cliffe and Stuart.
So, I'm not entirely for I'm partially an irrationalist myself.
So you're not into rationality? You don't
Not
need reason
entirely.
to do good
I
science to seek after truth?
I do. Well, I question the value of truth inherently. So I do like rationality, and I do like truth, but I think they can only be used to a certain degree before they start becoming unhealthy, we'll say. So I do think.
Good.
Truth,
So you use some level of faith and belief.
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I do believe in faith and belief. You know, Kierkegaard and the leap of faith. You take a leap of faith, whether into Christianity or away from it. It doesn't matter. You're taking a leap of faith. That's how I agree with that.
So is your problem with Christ or Christians?
I respect Christ as a character a lot, even though I am quite opposed to a lot of what he says.
Why do you respect him as a character if he claimed to be God? Isn't he just a madman, a schizophrenic, if he claimed to be God? He's no good man.
Well,
He's a lunatic.
I can disregard that, but I do like madmen as well. They're quite exciting.
Unless you hate your father and mother, you cannot be my disciple. You respect that kind of madman? I don't respect that kind of madman who says, let the dead bury their own dead, who throws over violently the money changers' desks in the temple and whips them. I don't respect that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Nope.
I respect the sort of his strength in willing to be himself wholeheartedly, especially in the denial of all the order in his time.
Doesn't he just contradict himself all the time? I mean, he came as a slave and yet he claims to be God? Sounds like a contradiction to me.
Well, that's a rational rule. I'm fine with contradiction. I allow it. I like it.
You have an irrational lunatic who you really look up to because of his authenticity?
That's one way to put it, yeah.
Let me ask you, how do I talk to a guy who says, I don't believe in the rational, but we're going to try and have a rational conversation right now? I don't believe in the rational, but I'm going to try and put words together grammatically correctly. How do you talk to a guy who contradicts themselves so desperately that they're trying to maintain that they don't really trust reason, but all they're doing in their conversation with me is trusting reason? Is that not the height of intellectual hypocrisy?
I think it can be used, and I think right now we're using it to a good degree. I just think that pure rationality isn't inherently good. And what I was getting at with the whole miracle thing, is
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of making Christianity rational and trying to rationalize all the miracles. I think that defeats the holiness and might of God, and that's kind of the point of having God.
Nobody out here is trying to rationalize miracles.
Well, I'm not trying to accuse anyone of that. I'm just saying I've seen it like online and other places.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
fine. If you and I are standing under an apple tree, an apple disengages from the branch 100 times out of 100, that apple is going to do what? It's going to hit the ground. Gravity works 100 times out of 100. But if I reach out with my hand and catch the apple, it's not going to hit the ground. That's the introduction of a hand to catch the apple to prevent it from hitting the ground. A miracle is simply a claim that there is a supernatural God who can intervene and change the apple from hitting the ground. That's a miracle. It is not a denial of the laws of nature. The New Testament does not, and the Bible does not deny the laws of nature. But it does say there is a supernatural hand that can intervene and perform what you and I call a miracle. God is not against nature. He's the creator of nature. Now, when he performs a miracle in Mary's womb and she conceives without having sex with Joseph, that is not saying for the next 9 months, God performed miracle after miracle after miracle in Mary's womb. No, the natural process took over. The fetus grew, became a baby that was born. But the initial conception was definitely a miracle. Meaning by that, it did not follow what naturally happens. No problem with that. What are you living for?
I get my value of my life, I believe, well, we mentioned Nietzsche. I'm quite a follower of Nietzsche. So I believe in the eternal recurrence of all things. So that either creates your own hell in life if you don't live your life the way you want to, or it creates your own paradise. And so writing is whenever I feel fulfilled. It's whenever I challenge myself and attack myself to make myself stronger. And I often do attack my atheistic beliefs as well. So
What's the evidence that writing is going to produce paradise?
There is no evidence, but I sure do like the feeling.
Good. Thanks for your honesty.
Yeah.
I like the feeling. What do you say to me if the purpose of my life is to get high? Because I like the feeling.
I view that a bit different. Because, I'm not a hedonist. I don't like hedonism. But I do believe there is a certain type of higher pleasure wherein you do overcome things. You overcome challenge and adversity. And I think that, I do feel that I do that in my writing, especially if I have like a writer's block. It's very difficult to try to come up with something. But if I keep on working at it, the feeling of overcoming that and reaching a new conclusion that I never thought of before, that's good enough.
And by putting words together in a rational order, you can communicate. And that is beautiful.
It is.
Now, is it more reasonable to think that behind your rational mind and your rational writing is an accidental collection of atoms, or is it more reasonable to believe that behind your rational mind is a rational being, God?
I don't really like either of those pathways because you either get causes ad infinitum, the infinite reduction of causes, or you get a prime mover, i.e. God. And both of those logically don't really make sense to me. Having an uncaused cause or having an infinite regression of causes, both of those don't really make sense to me. So
it doesn't make sense to you? There has to be a rational mind?
Well, it's very similar to Descartes' argument. I think, therefore I am. I don't
no, it's not.
You don't?
You're here to develop your rational mind. Now, come on, guys. Let's agree. We all have rational minds. Now, the question is it more plausible to believe that behind your rational mind is the non-rational or the irrational? Or is it more reasonable to believe that behind your rational mind is a rational God who gave you that ability to think rationally?
I don't know, it might be a flaw of my own mind that I can't understand.
All right.
But I just
Subjective.
It's very simple. It's in the beginning, there's nothing. You never, ever get something coming from nothing. That is impossible.
I don't think that there is an argument to say that there was nothing in the beginning.
I think the Big Bang points to it. There was nothing. The fact that you love the irrational, there's nothing I can say to you. Because if I try and reason with you, you're just going to hit a wall and say, I don't trust reason. See how frustrating that is? I don't think that's a very wise way to live your life. You don't use reason and then all of a sudden say, no more reason. I just jump into the irrational. That's not a very reasonable way to live your life, sir.
What if, just for sake of argument, reason led to you realizing that God did not exist?
Tell me what you believe. Tell me what you think. What do you think?
I don't think God exists.
Why?
It's just my feeling. I was raised in a Christian family, and I just...
But if I stood out here and you asked me, why do you think God does exist? And I said, because it's a feeling. God is a feeling I have. How would you respond to that?
I'd be fine with that.
You'd be fine with that? Well, I wouldn't. Because for all I know, if God is just a feeling I have, then maybe it's gas I'm having in my stomach. And I'm calling it God. You can't believe in something just because you have a feeling. You've got to get your brain in gear, and you got to ask, what's most reasonable? Not what can I prove? You can't prove anything. But the evidence of order and design pointing to a designer, moral absolutes pointing to a moral lawgiver, love pointing to a personal being who gives us the ability to love, meaning, the innate drive for meaning in life that even Nietzsche had, we all have, points us to the fact that we were probably created for a purpose. There is meaning to life.
Can you repeat what you said?
The reason that I believe in God is because my atheist friends think that non-existence produces existence. That's a miracle. But my atheist friend has no miracle worker. The reason I believe there's a God is because my atheist friend thinks that chaos produces order. That's a miracle. But my atheist friend has no miracle worker.
Your belief is entirely rational, or would you say it's like a mix of faith and rational?
My relationship with you right now, you can communicate, you have a rational mind. But obviously, I'm having to trust you. Now, we don't know each other very well, that's for sure. But if I had the opportunity to get to know you better, that would be a tremendous gift for me. And I would delight in listening to you, watching you, and getting to know you better. So reason is involved in our relationship. I have never met a person who can just consistently live according to their feelings. It's part of what it means to be a human being created in the image of God. You got a mind, you got emotions.
If you're just going to base your relationships off feelings, good luck with that.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Especially, hey, when you have kids one day, oh, there's a stranger over there. Hey, I have feelings. He has candy. I have good feelings because I like candy. I'm going to go over to that stranger, trust my kid with that stranger, or you're going to look at evidence plus feeling. And the evidence is, I know that man. I know his track record. I know his character. So I'm good with him giving my kids candy. I mean, it shows itself in everyday life. And I want to touch on Nietzsche for a second, since you're such a big Nietzsche fan. Okay, firstly, he said God is dead. And he said, watch the consequences now.
Yeah.
He said, secondly, God is dead, but there will remain shadows of God. Thirdly, he said, God is dead. But if you claim to be an atheist and you have pity on people, compassion for people, live ethically, live for human rights, you just say you're an atheist, but you're really a Christian.
Absolutely.
So stop living a double-minded, double-standard, hypocritical type of life, he said to his atheist friends. That's consistent. Okay, so I love that I'm meeting an atheist right now who's such a big Nietzsche fan, because most atheists I know, as in all atheists I know, are terrified of Nietzsche. Terrified of Nietzsche. So, and something, last point, when you say I live for writing, that is, my friend, a very fragile existence. When I've counseled people who've lived for things like family or art, they end up in psych units. When their parents pass, or one woman I was counseling, she wanted to get into a certain art school. She was a very gifted artist. She didn't get into that school. She ended up in a psych unit for a month. Things fall apart. Nietzsche said that kind of thing would happen. That's the shadows in many ways. Okay, David Foster Wallace said, you live for something finite like writing. It will eat you alive. He's an atheist. You live for something transcendent, and it will always be able to sustain your greatest desires.
I do agree, yeah.
So live for studies, live for writing. That is a fragile life that will really let you down one day.
Well, that's kind of the point of Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, was to have an infinity, because he also understood that infinity was much too important to man. I mean, I personally, my definition of man is the religious being. And I think the religion is essentially a way to bring infinity to our minds so that we can live with a purpose. Or try
So
to.
it's just all an illusion, but we need to live by it.
Yeah, it's lucid dreaming. You're aware that you're dreaming, and yet you must consist with the dream.
I think Nietzsche was a little more consistent than you are.
Would you?
I would.
I think he
definitely
ended
would.
up in a psych ward as well.
He did. And what's so funny is his final 2 weeks of his life was quoting scripture as a child. And he couldn't speak and he couldn't talk. He was a madman and yet just kept quoting scripture. I love that trick that God played on him.
It was
How fascinating is that? It's great that you grew up in a Christian home. Now search a little more. Don't live based off of feelings. And definitely don't start acting like free will is an illusion. God and the infinite is an illusion. But our lives are lived as if they are real. I mean, is it more practical and reasonable to say, hey, free will, I am living it out on a day-to-day basis. I go home and I say, hey, my 3-year-old, you should or should not have done that. I don't go home and say, oh, whatever you do, well, will be. No, there's consequences based off of free will. Please don't go about your life just pretending, even though you know it's an illusion. And just because we need religion in order to have society or culture. No, it's beyond that. Do some honest searching. Don't just live by illusions, feelings, and that sort of thing. That's just to jump off into a place of zero truth. Zero truth, pure subjectivity, and that's a scary form of existence to me.
Question is, what or who is eternal? And obviously the Big Bang Theory points out very clearly that this universe is not eternal. 13 to 15 billion years ago, there was a beginning.
Well, there was a point in which there was no time. Time breaks down at a singularity. So the concept just doesn't apply.
Okay, but the question is, what or who is eternal?
But that's assuming that there is something that is eternal.
Well, what or who was around before the Big Bang?
Singularity.
What does that mean, singularity?
A point in which there is no space, no time, just infinite density. The sum total of existence in a single
Doesn't the
point.
first law of thermodynamics teach us that matter just doesn't spring into existence on its own?
Right, but there's no time before for it to have sprang into existence. It just as well could be eternal as well as God.
Okay, so then in answer to the question, what is eternal, I only know 4 options. The first option is, in the beginning, before the Big Bang, there was nothing. But as that great thinker Mary Poppins sang so beautifully, nothing comes from nothing, nothing ever could. You never get something coming from nothing. So I can't accept that first option. The second option is, in the beginning there's matter and energy. Matter and energy are eternal. My experience of love, my experience of justice, my experience of free will informs me that there's a lot more to reality than simple matter and energy.
But what more would there be than matter and energy?
Conscious mind, free will,
Free from what?
free to make my own decisions, that I'm not a machine. I'm not just a complex biochemical reaction.
But if that's the case, I mean, then how is it that, say, if I was to inject serotonin into my system, I would feel happy? That emotion is chemically produced.
Yes, if you inject serotonin into your body, if you're struggling with depression, that'll definitely help you deal with the depression.
If you can correlate all emotional states with some sort of chemical brain state.
Obviously, we're physical beings, and obviously, biochemical imbalance leads to depression, no question about it. But when you've written up the physical description of the human brain, I'm insisting you haven't told the whole story. Why? Tonight, I can sit on the side of my bed and critique myself. I can judge myself. I can say, Cliff, when you answered that student, you were disrespectful. Don't do that again. When you answered that student, you were respectful. Do that again. My ability to critique myself, my ability to know myself, my ability to judge myself shows me that I'm not simply a machine. I have a will that's free, and I'm capable of critiquing myself.
But you can make a machine with recursive processing that will correct its own programming.
Notice that you pointed out, first of all, you can make a machine. Yes, obviously an intelligent mind can make some pretty impressive things. But you got to have that intelligent mind, which pushes us back to that first piece of evidence for God's existence, which is order and design of the complexity that you and I are surrounded by demands some type of intelligent mind, doesn't it?
But in that case, that also begs the question of the designer of the designer.
Well, no. Remember, there are only 4 options to answer the question, what is eternal? First option is, in the beginning there was nothing. Second option is, in the beginning there's matter and energy. Third option, in the beginning there's a mind who creates his complex watch, sets it ticking, and disengages. That's deism, like Thomas Jefferson held to. Fourth option, in the beginning there's an intelligent mind who makes this complex creation and actually wants to be involved in it. That's what Jesus Christ revealed. So which of those 4 options is most reasonable to you?
I would have to choose the second option.
The second. All right. And the reason that I can't accept the second is because I think it's rather clear from things like the Big Bang Theory that matter and energy are not simply eternal. There was a real beginning. And secondly, my experience of life includes love, justice, free will. And you've got to have a conscious mind to create love and justice and free will. Yeah. Love and justice and free will just don't spring by accident from inanimate matter.
Well, not from accident, but not from purpose either.
Yeah, but how do you get love and justice and free will out of inanimate matter?
Well, it's all in the programming.
Okay, but if it's programmed, then it's not free. You know that.
It was an illusion.
Yeah, but if she looks you in the face and says, hey, I really love you, do you look her back in the face and say, I appreciate the way you're programmed?
No, my programming will probably prompt me to say I love you back.
Okay, but the reason that I'm so excited about the fact that my wife loves me is I know very, very well that she does not have to love me. You know, when my wife and I were dating, she used to put it this way, Cliff, you have some wonderfully unique characteristics. Then after we got married, she said to me, Cliff, you are really different. And then after that it was, Cliff, you're weird at times. You see, the better she got to know me, the more she realized, Cliff, you have warts and flaws the same way we all do. And guess what, Cliff? I don't have to love you. I don't have to be committed to you. But what is so exciting for me is the way she actually forgives me, which she doesn't have to do, the way she actually loves me, the way she actually is committed to me, which she doesn't have to do. She freely chooses to do it. Well, guys, I don't know about for you. Well, I do think I know for you. Speaking for myself, that is a huge hunk of life. Relationships based on love. And love is not programmed. Love is not manipulated. Love is not coerced. Love is a free decision to actually care for another person. Now, if that's not part of your experience, then you've just taken away from me one of my strongest pieces of evidence that God exists. But I think if you're going to be honest with yourself, you're going to have to acknowledge, oh yes, that's a huge part of my experience of life.
Why would, in your worldview, God basically, it almost seems like sent or give people different opportunities to get to heaven or hell?
Yeah.
And how does that coincide with free will when it seems like in general so many people tend to just follow the religion into which they were born?
So just because my parents told me that Jesus is the truth doesn't mean that he's not the truth, right?
Yeah.
So becoming an adult means you have to think for yourself. And the majority of my atheist friends grew up in Christian homes. Okay? So just because you grew up in a home that taught something doesn't mean you have to follow it. You have a free will, you're responsible. Is God going to judge me differently from a guy who was born in Papua New Guinea and never heard about Christ? You bet. God is going to judge us according to what we had as opportunities. God is not going to judge us based on our ignorance. So because God is all-knowing, he's in a position to judge each one of us uniquely, fairly, and justly.
Say someone follows a different religion that they were taught and that they believe to be true.
Yeah.
You think God will judge them in a way, like, I presume that if they were exposed to Christianity, you would say they would go to hell. But what if they believe just as much as you that their religion is true?
Good.
Or what if an atheist believes that
You bet.
they're right?
This pink elephant, you know the one right here? This pink elephant gives my life meaning, purpose, and direction. This pink elephant is awesome.
I'd say your pink elephant is the same thing as you saying that God exists. So like
Good.
what how come you get to decide that your God is the correct God?
Okay, I don't decide that my God is the correct God. The question is the evidence supporting the pink elephant who's right here?
No.
Thank you. No. Does the evidence support some type of a God existing?
No.
No?
I'd say no one can actually know if God. I'd say I'm agnostic because I don't believe anyone could actually know that God exists.
I think it's impossible to live an agnostic life because you have to make ethical decisions every day, and the ethical decisions you make tattle what you really believe. You have to make a decision every day. Are people valuable or are they trash? The decision you make shows what you really believe about reality. You have to make a decision every day. That guy in that casket or in that urn, is there life after death or not? You have no decision, no option. You have to decide. So you see, sir, the decisions that you make tattle what you really believe. So please don't tell me you're agnostic.
I'm still agnostic. Like that doesn't show that. I'm saying that I believe that no one can believe that no one can truly know if their God is correct or not. Like I don't believe that you can truly be 100% sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure that I'm not a bad dream you're having right now.
Yeah. that would
Okay?
be correct.
All right, so we agree on that.
Yes.
I can't prove anything 100%.
Correct.
But guess what? As a thinking human being, I don't base my life on proof. I base my life on evidence. The evidence is that his face starts right there. That's why my fist stops here. Not because I can prove to you 100% that he's right here. Maybe my eyesight's lying to me.
But they're like, yeah, that's true. But we tend to just go off the presupposition that our senses like work. But
No, I don't go off a presupposition that my senses work. I experience this.
that's a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, I'm not presupposing that my senses tell me the truth. I'm experiencing this. And I know very well that if I smack him, there's going to be contact. Why? Because the evidence of my experience tells me that's true. Because I've been hit and didn't feel good. So the evidence is that yes, my senses perceive reality. That's why I trust my senses.
well, but that's a circular position. So you trust your senses in a
Because
circular
my
way.
no, I experience my senses putting me in touch with reality. That's why I trust my senses.
So you have no presuppositions, like.
Yes, I have presuppositions, but I can promise you, as a thinking person, I'm going to question those presuppositions and I'm going to ask why. Why have I embraced those presuppositions? And the reason that I have embraced the presupposition that my senses perceive reality is because I experience contact, touch, and I talk with him and we find out yes. Now, why do you trust your reason?
My point is, reason is a presupposition. Like, there is nothing to base it off of, but we act as if it exists. Same thing with your senses. When you're saying that you touch him and you believe that you're touching him, in general, science would say that you could theoretically put your hand and one in like hundreds of billions of times it would go through him. That's
Yeah.
the thing that's said in science. Do you disagree with that?
I sure do.
So you disagree.
There is-
So you disagree with science?
Yeah, walk through
Yeah.
the tree.
Well,
Please,
I'm
go
telling
right
you
ahead.
that
Walk
it's
through the
insanely
tree.
unlikely because the particles are moving, but in
Yeah,
general,
the particles are
in science,
moving, and your particles are moving. So why can't
Correct.
you walk through the tree?
Well, theoretically, you could. In science.
Theoretically.
Just
Baloney. I
just
can't base
because
my
it
life on
seems
theoretical.
Crazy doesn't mean that in science it can't theoretically happen. I know it sounds crazy, but
Thank you. It sure does sound
in
crazy.
science that does happen.
Oh, no, it does not happen. I have never watched a man or a woman walk through a tree.
I've never watched someone be resurrected.
Good. But guess what? You do know that existence is real, that life is real. And so now you've got to ask yourself the question, is it more reasonable to believe that life comes from non-life, that existence is produced by non-existence, or is it more reasonable to believe that life comes from life and that existence comes from a creator? What's more plausible? Not what you can prove. I know you can't prove anything, neither can I. But what is more plausible? What is more reasonable in light of the evidence? That's what you got to ask. And don't give me this garbage that, oh no, science has to prove something in order for me to believe it. Science has nothing to say about love. It has nothing to say about meaning in life. It has nothing to say about life after death. Nothing. Because science deals with what you can observe, what you can quantify. And you can't observe and quantify love, meaning, and whether there's life after death or not. It's far more reasonable to believe that morals come not from matter, but that morals come from a personal being who defines what's right and wrong. It's far more reasonable to believe that life comes from life. It is not reasonable for any of you guys to believe life comes from non-life. Oh, that's a miracle, guys. The only problem is you guys don't have a miracle worker. There's no God for you.
Hold on.
No, don't hold on. Think. Think hard. Think accurately. Life does not come from non-life. Never. Can you show me life coming from non-life? And yet you guys believe in a miracle.
No.
Life comes from non-life at the
We
inception.
believe in low probability things.
Oh,
sometimes
baloney.
happen.
Low probability
Baloney.
did not make him.
Yes, it did.
No, it did
You
not.
Actually, that's 100% what happened.
No. He has a mom and a
Literally all
dad.
genetics.
He has a
Yeah,
mom and a
all
dad.
genetics
He
says
doesn't
that.
have low probability made you, buddy.
What
Aren't
are
you lucky, a
talking-
sucker?
This is the most. This is like the craziest argument ever.
I think you are a little bit
Genetics-
crazy. I
genetics-
think you are.
Think about this. Genetics, right?
Yeah, genetics.
Yeah. What is the probability of his exact genetic code happening? 100%?
Sir, you're making a classic mistake of the observation of different sperm and different eggs. Gosh, what's the probability? That doesn't create anything. That's a statistical fact, okay?
Statistical.
But that doesn't create him. What creates him is a mom and a dad, two living beings creating him. You don't get life from a statistic. And by the way, you don't win the lottery because of a statistic. You win the lottery by buying a ticket. And that's my whole point. Science is a wonderful description of reality. But I can promise you, science doesn't create. Science describes creation. It describes life. Bravo. But you can't say science made this guy. No, science didn't make him.
So God made humans, right?
Yeah, God made humans.
Why did he give them leukemia, though?
He didn't. Human beings rebelled against God. We went over this already in Genesis chapter 3. When we rebelled against God, that's where things got messed up.
I mean, I didn't rebel against God.
Oh, yes, you have.
Okay, so what's your...
So have I, by the way. I've rebelled against God also.
Sure, so all those little toddlers who get leukemia, because they do, and that's very sad. They deserved it?
No, they didn't deserve it, but they are born into an unfair world, a messed up world.
Yes, but that is an evil explicitly created by God.
No, it is not.
That is not
It is
out
a
of
free
anywhere
decision to rebel against God. And
Wait,
when
so
people
the
make that
toddler
free
made
decision,
the free decision to rebel against God, which is why he got leukemia.
no, false. The guy gets leukemia because he's born into an unfair, broken, messed up world. That's the world I was born into. That's the world all of you were born into.
So, wait, remind me, the world is messed up and broken, which is why the kid gets leukemia. What made the world messed up and broken again?
Human beings rebelled against God.
But human
Like
beings
Eden,
weren't-
or are we talking like in general? Us right now?
We're talking about our forefathers and foremothers, and me and you. We've all rebelled against God,
Okay,
and that
but
leads
you
to
believe in
destructiveness.
determinism.
So
No, I don't
but
believe.
this is-
You have to believe in determinism.
I do.
Good, bravo, well done.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good.
I believe in that
Smack.
viewpoint.
Smack. Why'd you hit her, Cliff? Because I had to. It was
Well,
determined
no,
that I hit
it's
her.
not- It's not I had to.
Oh, yes, it is if you believe in
happened.
determinism.
It's not I had to, it happened.
Oh, it happened.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
baloney.
What do you mean baloney?
Determinism means it has been determined that I hit her.
Yes, correct. Well,
Thank you.
yes,
That's
yes.
right, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, and my point is, if I hit her, turn to you and you ask me, why'd you hit her? And I say, because I had to. It was determined. You know I'm lying through my teeth, I hope.
well,
That's not at all
That's
what
not what
determinism
yeah,
is, to
yeah.
the extent that
Determinism means it has been determined. Determinism means I don't have a choice. It's been determined. Let's be honest with our language, guys.
I'm being honest.
No, you're not.
Yes, I completely am. I said I believe in determinism. If you hit her, it wasn't. There's nothing of you that makes it your fault. There is no your fault.
Good.
It's just inputs and outputs.
Good.
How you're genetic. I
Yeah.
fully believe in determinism. I'm not lying.
But you can't live it out.
Yes, I can.
If
Every
I
word
smack
that's coming
her,
out of my mouth
are you going to
has
hold
been
that me
criticized.
responsible for smacking her or not?
What do you mean?
Are you going to say,
There
Cliff,
is no
it
you.
was wrong? There's good. I like
I
you.
yes,
Very
I'm
good. There's no
consistent. I know
you.
it's like you.
And I would insist you are wrong, and it's proven by you how you live your life.
No.
Hey, this woman says I love you, and you say, I understand, you have to love me. You don't live that way, man. And if I smack her, you're not going to say, oh, Cliff, you had to smack her. And if I'm racist, you're not going to say,
Well,
oh,
using
Cliff,
the
I
word-
understand. You
No,
have to be racist.
No, that's the worst mischaracterization. It's inputs and outputs that create racist people. That's the way to characterize.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
So all my white racist friends have input and output,
Yes.
and they just have to do what they're
No,
determined to
not
do.
have to do it. It just comes to.
Oh, come on now.
Inputs and outputs.
Determinism means
is what it
there's
means.
no you. You just do what you're programmed to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
You're
So
doing
be
what you're programmed
consistent.
to do. I
And I'm standing here saying, my white racist friends, I got to look them in the face and say, you're wrong, and you better change your behavior.
And maybe that will be an input that changes their behavior. And that input comes, and you saying that comes from things that happen to you. And things that happened to you come from other inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Determinism.
Let me
Well, I don't
ask
agree
you
with you because
I
I
know,
don't
we
think
disagree.
exactly.
It's okay.
I don't think that my behavior is determined by my bad potty training from my mom and dad. I
It is.
insist.
It's one of your inputs.
No, it's not.
Yes, it
My
is.
behavior is a result of my free choice.
Okay, quick question.
I disagree.
Wait.
Don't interrupt. We're with him, and we'll get to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
I mean-
I'm building off of his.
No, forget it. He's talking. Go ahead.
I completely disagree. I think every word that's coming out of my mouth, all
Yes.
this vocabulary, like
Right.
everything I know,
Right.
comes from inputs and outputs. All of my beliefs come from inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
I disagree with you because of inputs and outputs. If I was in your situation and I grew up like you, I had the exact same genetics, I would be standing there like you, and you would be standing here like me.
Okay.
Inputs and outputs.
So yes, determinism possibly is right. But if a dude, all right, come here, you dude with a beard. Let me hear a second. All right. So this guy comes around a corner with a stack of books under his arm. I haul back, smack him as hard as I can. I'm hauled into a court of law. I stand before a judge, and the judge says, hey, Cliff, why on earth did you go up and smack this guy as hard as you can? I say, it's very simple, Your Honor. I grew up with an abusive father. And my abusive father had a little balding, gray hair like this. And whenever he would abuse me, he would take a big book and slam me over the head. And this dude just so reminded me of my abusive father that I had to haul back and hit him.
Yes.
The judge will say, Cliff, I'm really sorry that you had that kind of abusive father.
Yes.
But you are still responsible for hauling back and punching him. The legal system in the United States, I am glad, is based not on determinism, it is based on the free will that we all have, which means we are responsible for what we do.
I don't think that, like, I think that in general, people who were abused, do you agree, tend to abuse more in the future. Do you disagree with that?
I don't think that a person who's been abused has to be an abuser.
They don't have to, because there are other inputs and outputs. But if someone is abused, it seems like in general they tend to abuse more.
Does anybody love you?
I really hope so.
Well, then if you hope so, it means you value love, right?
Well, yeah, but I would disagree with what love is when you say it.
And I respect your intellectual consistency. I respect it highly. You're living it out. And I think it's scary.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because it means that I am not responsible for what I do. What I do has been determined.
I don't want to like make it political, but like things that, like for example, structural racism, like stuff that has happened in the past leads to things in the future.
Right.
This is where these ideas come from.
Yeah.
Things that happen in the past affect what happens in the future.
Yeah.
Right? And if you take all the inputs and outputs of the world that happened in the past, that is why we are where we are today, and what is happening the way it is today.
Okay.
That's the idea.
I disagree.
Okay, yeah. That's
You know why? I respect Harriet Tubman. I respect Gandhi. I respect Mother Teresa. Well, why, Cliff? Why do you respect those people? Because obviously they didn't have to do what they did. Instead, they chose to contradict their culture. They chose to contradict their upbringing. And they chose to fight the caste system, to fight slavery at the cost of their lives. That's why I respect them. I don't respect them because they had to do what they did. And I don't excuse a racist because you grew up in a racist environment, and so therefore you have to hate people of different ethnic heritages. Baloney. You don't have to hate anybody. You choose to hate, you choose to love. You choose to forgive, or you choose to stick it to a person who's hurt you. That's my experience of reality, guys. Now, if your experience is different, so be it. But I think you're lying to yourself and you're lying to me. You know very well that you respect Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln. Why? Because they contradicted their culture. They contradicted their environment. They followed their conscience instead of following the status quo. Now, if you don't respect those people for that reason, fine.
You respect the things they
Tell me why you respect them. Well, I don't respect them, Cliff. Well, there would be another disagreement that you and I would have.
I don't think they exist anymore, for example.
All right.
The people who are dead.
All right. I feel like paying you for standing out here and going at it with me. I cannot thank you enough. And I really respect your intellectual consistency. I am sick and tired of talking to atheists who say, oh no, they're moral objective truths. Baloney, you know they're not. I know they're not, if there is no God.
Yes.
If there is no God, it's all a pile of chemicals, and we're just living out our chemical reactions.
Correct.
Correct. Except when you go home tonight, you can't treat your roommate that way, and you can't treat the woman you're dating that way unless you want to blow up your relationship fairly fast.
What do you mean? When I go home and I do the things I do, it's because of inputs and outputs. When I treat someone well, it's because I've been taught to treat people well.
No.
Yes.
It's because you make a decision about how to handle those inputs and those outputs.
Well, your chemical structure makes a decision.
The point, I agree with you. There are chemical reactions in the brain. We agree. My point is there is still a you that makes a decision how you're going to treat your chemical inputs and outputs.
Of the chemical structures. You
Yep.
believe there's something that, but you would agree we can't point to that thing, and we can't.
That's
there's nothing
right.
to
It's
point to.
not material.
But it's nothing. There is
No, it is very real.
Not material. There's no evidence of this.
Oh, yes, there is.
No, there is.
Yes, there is. Your brain, I can physically dissect your head and touch your brain and analyze it. Your thoughts, I don't have any access physically to your thoughts.
Well, wait. Yes, you.
No, I
Pretty sure
don't.
You do.
I cannot take your thoughts and
wait,
put them in a
that's
test
not-
tube. I can take your brain and put it in a test tube, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
cannot
but-
take your thoughts.
But you can connect things to my brain and see what I'm thinking.
No, I cannot
Yes,
see your
like,
motives.
not-
I cannot see your
Oh,
motives.
you're changing it now, though. But you can know what someone is thinking about. You can know if someone, for example, let's say someone connects something to your brain, they can see and puts up a thing, and they're like, "Do you agree with this?" They can tell if your brain agrees with it or not.
I make a decision.
Okay.
In other words, not the chemicals
And
made a
what made you
decision.
make that decision?
Yes.
A lot of different issues.
A lot of
No.
Environment, genetic makeup, will, free will, love, forgiveness.
Okay.
Some of them are very tangible, like genetics, like my environment, and others of them are intangible, like love, forgiveness, compassion, empathy.
And
That's
what
why I
made
do
you
it.
Feel those things.
Pardon?
What made you feel those things? And
I
then
can change my mind. You can change your
you
mind.
can change your
You
mind,
change-
but you
Yep.
have to will to change your mind.
There-
Where did that will come from?
It came from my soul, from me,
Okay.
from my
And where did
rational
that-
mind,
and where
my
did that come
conscience,
from?
my emotions. That comes
Where-
from God.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
comes
Those
from
are
God,
God-given
so you have to-
gifts.
So,
But if there is no God, those gifts do not exist. There's no part, it's not a chemical. My will is part of my soul, an intangible soul that I have because God made me a body, yes, chemicals, yes, but also a soul, intangible consciousness.
okay, for the sake of contradiction, let's assume there's a soul, right? This soul willed something, right? It wills you to want to consume alcohol. It wills you to want to go outside. It wills you to go study your calculus homework. Some part of you wills it, and then that happens. Some part of your soul, some part of whatever intangible sense,
Thank you.
it has been willed, right?
Thank you.
You do what you will,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And if you want to change that will, part of you needs to will that, right?
Part of you,
So, in sense,
all
I'm
right,
not
the
going to
free
get into
will
the
that we
syntactical
have
problem here.
chooses to do that.
Yeah. So, if you choose to do that, you chose to do that because of something else, right? Like if I choose to stop consuming alcohol, I had to want to not consume alcohol.
I chose to think
What
through the
made you
consequences of
What
alcoholism.
made you want to will through the consequences?
What made what?
What made you want to look through the consequences of consuming alcohol?
Because I got some buddies who are alcoholics.
Okay, so
I saw how they destroyed themselves through their alcoholism,
Okay.
and I decided I don't want to go down that path. And I got other buddies who crammed too much fat into their bodies and their arteries are clogged. And I decided I'd like to see my grandchildren get married. So I'm not going to put cholesterol into my body.
So what you're saying is that it's something outside of yourself.
And what I'm saying is I made an observation of reality,
Okay.
and based on my observation of reality, I made some decisions.
How can you say that you have free will if your will originated from something outside of yourself?
Because we've gone over this and you're not listening.
I
I
think
told
you're
you
not.
flat out, your will is a gift from God.
Yes.
I didn't create my will, you don't create your will. We're born with it. We're born with a conscience, we're born with a rational mind, we're born with a will. Those are gifts that God has given every single one of us.
Okay.
Now the question is, how are you going to use those gifts?
Do you think it's possible to live life as a logically consistent atheist? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel to help this video reach more people. And always remember, Jesus loves you.